I'm April Brown. Sustainability and conservation are two buzzwords in America today. How are we going to grow? Well, the city of Tucson has opened an office dedicated to that, or actually I should say those two topics. The Office of Conservation and Sustainable Development is just over a year old and was the 5th in the nation created. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve on this one. Joining me today to talk about it is Leslie Liberti. She's the director of the Office of Conservation and Sustainable Development. Like I said, been in her position for just over a year. Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure.
And to her left, Ann Audrey, the Environmental Projects Coordinator, I should say, for that office. Thank you, Ann, for joining us.
Thank you.
Leslie, I'd like to start with you. What is the city's plan with regard to an Office of Sustainability and Conservation? How did it come about?
Well, it's really an important topic for the city council and for the city manager's office. It's about how do we grow in a way that's smart, it has a quality of life for the community where people enjoy being here, that you know there's this there's feel of belonging. And so the idea is, how do we make that happen?
You can probably be a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Yes.
What are the types of things that you all do?
Wow, it's quite a variety of things that we get involved in. Just to give you kind of the extremes, everything from working with community organizations on the buffalo grass eradication that we hear a lot about, to meeting with people about noise attenuation in Midtown caused by Davis-Monthan.
So you've got two people basically taking on this right now, you and Ann. How do you divide some of your major responsibilities? You can't tackle everything for both of you, so how have you divided this, and what do each of you face on a regular basis?
A lot of my role is developing a vision for what does sustainability mean to the city. What are the issues that we have to overcome? How do we, internal to the city and in how we interact with the community, develop kind of the infrastructure and the process to move ourselves forward?
Who's deciding what are the important things?
Well, the community ultimately has to decide.
Okay. And how does your role work within the office?
Well, sustainability ultimately happens on the ground. That's when it becomes real. So I work with the natural resource conservation side of sustainability, and also with community members in giving them information and empowering them to take on some projects. So it's more of the interface with the land in the city.
Do you work with businesses? Do you work with individuals? How many different types of entities or individuals do you end up working with since you're on the ground?
Well, I work with developers and nonprofit groups, neighborhood associations, businesses, the university at times, other agencies, the Park Service, Pima County. So there's just every member of the community is interested in sustainability at some level, and so that interface is very broad.
You've only been around for a year, so it's hard to get tons of things done, but how do you end up going about measuring your accomplishments within conservation and sustainability?
Well, one of the measures that gives us the most satisfaction are the number of people that have come in our doors and said, we need help, and we've been able to facilitate that for them. And we've had a lot of really incredible successes, I think, from working on larger projects, and worked really closely with the Ward 4 office, which is Councilwoman Shirley Scott, and some of the neighborhoods in that area, and Tucson Audubon Society to apply for a $400,000 grant to do restoration along the Atterbury Wash. So everything from very significant projects like that to having an individual developer come in and say, you know, I want to do water harvesting and I'm running into conflicts with the code. And we were able to, with a group of city staff, resolve his issue in about 20 minutes.
That seems like probably an office that a lot of people were dreaming about. And Ann, I think you had mentioned that you were with nonprofits before. When you heard about this, did your eyes just light up and, oh my goodness, thank the Lord?
Well, yes. When I was working for nonprofits, including Tucson Audubon and the Sonoran Permaculture Guild, there were a lot of projects we wanted to undertake. We wanted to partner with the city on things, and we were in the end able to accomplish that, but it wasn't so clear-cut as picking up one telephone and making a call and immediately being networked into the heart of the city. So it fell to me to sort of help to create that network with the city. Now people can call this office, and that web of connections is right there and easily accessible. So it's fantastic that this is finally a resource in Tucson.
Being on the other end of it now, the person who is able to break down barriers oftentimes for these people, I mean, you must get a lot of satisfaction from that.
It's a terrific place to be. I'm very happy. I feel privileged to be able to be doing this work because, well, for one thing, it was kind of a struggle all of those early years, and now there's so much interest inside city government to do this that it's an incredible opportunity, and it gives me a chance to pull in the network that I worked with all those years and immediately knit them together with the city. So a lot of the struggle has been solved in a very short period of time to the benefit of both the community and the city.
I'm going to take a break right now, let you know if you want to get more information on the Office of Conservation and Sustainable Development. There are several ways to do it. The phone number for that office is area code 520-791-4675, and the website www.tucsonaz.gov/OCSD. Leslie, what's so significant about this office? Why did we need to create it?
Well, a lot of cities have undertaken a sustainability program. And you mentioned we're actually the 5th in the nation to have a dedicated office. One of the things that's coming out of some of the discussions with other cities and what their experience has been, a lot of them early on either had a person within city government, either in the mayor's office, within a specific department that was responsible for coordinating all of this, or they dedicated that responsibility to an already existing department. So the planning department was also responsible for their sustainability initiative, or public works, environmental quality, in some cases even development services. And they're finding that that really constrains their ability to function effectively, because to a large extent we're an overarching issue. We touch the activities of all the different departments, and to have it focused within just one of those is really limiting. So having a dedicated office like this, not only are we one of the early leaders, but we're really recognizing at a national level that this is one of the most effective ways to really bring sustainability as an ethic into the whole city culture, and to make that knowledge and those resources available to the community.
To make a sustainable community, we're also probably going to need to include our neighbors that are not within city limits, but perhaps county residents and residents of Marana and Oro Valley. How is that all coming together?
Well, on May 2nd of this year, Pima County adopted a sustainability resolution, and as part of that decided that they were going to create a coordinator position. And their sustainability coordinator started Monday of this week, so we're really excited. I have a partner in crime now. And a lot of people see on issues like water and sewer tension between the different jurisdictions, but this is one topic where we all know what's important, and the cooperation has just been phenomenal. I have enjoyed a really great working relationship with the county, even before the sustainability coordinator came on. Pima Association of Governments is a real supporter, as well as the University of Arizona.
So what precisely is your mission then? We've discussed some of the things that you do, but let's get down to the heart of it.
Well, our official mission is to provide leadership and contribute practical solutions to ensure a prosperous community where people and nature thrive now and in the future. And like all definitions of sustainability, it's kind of, a lot of fancy words, and what does it mean? In a more explicit sense, there are 3 areas that are really key missions for our office. One is to provide leadership and encourage leadership in other departments within the city. This means educating people about, well, what is sustainability? What constitutes sustainable design? What can we do as city staff so that individual departments' activities reflect these important principles? A second piece of it is, how do we implement this vision that the city has? We've got a lot of tools available to us. We do planning, there's incentives, occasionally regulation, and how do we make use of those tools so that these values and this vision really is brought into effect? And thirdly, and this is probably, at least in my mind, one of our most critical functions, there's a real enthusiasm and need out in the community. So how can we bring information and resources and tools to individuals, to organizations, businesses, other agencies, so that they can make environmentally sound decisions?
And since there are only 5 of these in the nation, or at least when yours was created, you probably don't have much of a blueprint to follow. So how do you go about, meeting the mission statement?
Well, I think that the mission statement is actually out in the community, in essence, in terms of their need. So now that we've been created, those communities that we're supposed to serve internally in the city and externally outside of city government are actually coming to us, asking the questions that give us a chance to manifest the mission. We've had many city departments call me up. I'm sure you've gotten many phone calls too. Oh, you're doing water harvesting. How can you help us understand this better? We're supposed to inspect these water harvesting basins. Can you come give us a slideshow and tell us what it is? So it's not as difficult as it might seem, because we're not trying to push anything into the community. We're just serving as a resource for the needs that were already there.
You've talked about the vision and the mission. What are you going to be focusing on in particular as you use the Tucson community to help meet these goals?
Well, I think one of the real challenges that we have is that people still feel isolated in the community. They feel like we're tackling this as an individual or as a neighborhood or as an organization. And one of the things that is a key role of this office is bringing those people together so that they're aware of what their resources are, they're aware of what other people are doing, really bringing attention to the wonderful demonstration projects that people have already done, and giving people the tools to replicate that in their own homes, yards, and in their own neighborhoods.
And you've got a great example of using someone who's already done a lot of the groundwork and his expertise in terms of maybe sharing these ideas with the others. Let's see, it's not the Audubon Washbird Sanctuary, it's the Lancaster residence, and I'm sorry that we're going a little bit out of order on the slides, but this was one of the things that was most striking to me. This is the same exact photograph, only 10 years apart. Tell me a little bit about how this got underway.
Well, Brad Lancaster is actually a world-renowned expert on rainwater harvesting in drylands. He's just finished volume 1 of a book that he's written on this subject. And he was part of that grassroots permaculture community that started working in Tucson in the early 90s. So he and his brother bought this urban lot and converted it using rainwater harvesting and the planting of native plants and using gray water and solar technology, and basically transformed a streetscape from a hammered, desiccated landscape into, in essence, a little neighborhood bird sanctuary. They've literally gotten 5 or 6 new species of birds showing up here and actively nesting at the site just because of creating a rich environment. So he's one of those example sites. He did this on his own, without being encouraged. And now that the community has much more of an interest in this and the city has much more of an interest, I regularly take little field trips of city staff over to Brad's house to take a look at it, because it's a fabulous model of what can be created in a small space.
Does it really inspire them once they actually see it?
Oh, they're so excited because it illustrates a lot of the principles of sustainable design. And that's another element of, this has to happen on the ground. So, for example, at Brad's house, they have a low water use washing machine with 3 outlet tubes that each have the name of a tree on the tube. And so when you do your laundry, you just switch the outlet gray water tube and you water a different tree that day. He and his brother didn't create enough laundry to water all those trees, so they invited the neighbors in to use the neighborhood laundromat. The neighbors contribute the quarters that they would spend at going to a commercial site, and with that, that's the money they use to buy the new low water use washing machine. So what he's done is create a synergy of machinery and water and the environment and community, and it's those interconnections between those elements that create sustainable designs.
So this one person is probably now affecting the mindset and perhaps the actions of dozens more.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he's in Hawaii right now for a national rainwater conference, and then he's going to Australia for an international rainwater conference. So he was literally taking the message that he developed in Tucson around the world right now.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Well, water harvesting for him was, I guess, his signature issue, but water preservation or wash preservation, restoration, those are also some of the things that you deal with. We've got another slide to talk about. That's the Atterbury Wash Bird Sanctuary. Tell me a little bit about this and what we're looking at.
Well, what you're looking at is an aerial photograph of the Lincoln Regional Park, which is near Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. And that has been turned into a bird sanctuary basically from the work of a neighborhood association, a very active Lincoln Groves Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association, who got it created as a sanctuary. They do plantings, they hand water the trees, they have youth groups come out and do erosion control. And they have this neighborhood association, along with Tucson Audubon Society, along with various City of Tucson departments, with Tucson Audubon as the lead, have applied for a $300,000 grant from the Arizona Water Protection Fund to do yet more restoration work on Atterbury Wash. And they're going to create all kinds of opportunities for that. Public outreach opportunities, volunteer opportunities, so people can come in and learn how to do these techniques. And once again, they're going to create a model site that becomes sort of the crystal around which a lot of other neighborhood wash protection people crystallize themselves. And that's exactly the kind of model that creates efficiency. You go out, you make your connections, you create the learning materials, and then you start to replicate that around the city. Our office is very well suited to create the connections that make these projects happen in the first place and then do that replication step.
Let's go back and talk about rainwater harvesting once again. You've got another example of how that works with a slide, which I love because the visuals are so helpful. You require it, or it's required by the city for large-scale public, commercial, and residential developments. How long has that been in effect and why?
The water harvesting was put into the code actually in the middle 1990s, and it's required for new public buildings, commercial sites, new subdivisions in their common areas, and new public rights-of-way. So now we're working very closely with the development community and the city staff to explain what water harvesting is, give them a lot of visual examples of it, and help them in the design of their projects. And what we're finding is that rainwater harvesting is a very rational thing to do. It saves water, it helps to clean stormwater runoff, it grows trees that create shade, and instead of finding resistance, we're actually finding that people get really excited about it as they start to think of the potential for this.
Is that because we're in a desert, or is it because people are really starting to have a mindset of protecting our resources in general, or perhaps it's maybe a bit of both?
I think it is a little bit of both. I mean, certainly if you look at the paper, I mean, every day there's something about water issues or land use or climate change. So we're finding that the average resident, the average business, the average developer is very cognizant of these issues, and people really do take seriously the need to be stewards of our environment. And part of it is the particular context. That's one thing that is really different about our office perhaps than some of the other cities. You talked about, not having models. Portland and Seattle and Chicago are all cities that we think of when we think of being sustainable, yet they take a focus that isn't necessarily appropriate here because they've got a lot of water. Green roofs is a good example, and that's something that's really challenging. So we have to look at what does sustainability mean here in our context.
We'll get to that in just a moment, but first I want to let you know you are watching Government Connection on Access Tucson. If you'd like more information about the topic that we are covering today, the city's Office of Conservation and Sustainable Development, you can call 520-791-4675, and you can also visit the website www.tucsonaz.gov/OCSD. And of course, there's more Government Connection next week. Next week, we will have, there we go. The Pima County Health Department is coming back. You might recall they were here a few weeks ago. We were talking about immunizations and other health-related topics. Today's August 8th, so I think that'll actually be next week. Anyway, they're coming back and they'll have more questions. They'll answer more questions about health. Turning back to our sustainability conversation, I'm sure you have to gather data to support the type of work that you're doing, and you've recently created a sustainability report. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what came out of that?
Well, the reason we did the sustainability report fairly early on in our office's existence is because we realized that the city was already doing a lot, and we put this in the framework of a number of national or international treaties that the city's adopted. We've adopted the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement and also the United Nations Urban Environmental Accords, and these set out some really important goals for what cities need to do to move towards greater sustainability. And in looking at the goals that are put forth in those treaties, we realized there is quite a lot that the city's already done, although perhaps it's not been framed under the concept of sustainability. So we brought all of those different projects and initiatives together to show where we're starting from. And it's been really exciting. Everyone's had the reaction, wow, I had no idea the city was doing so much.
So it's nice to be able to tell them that. And,
yes, it is.
Maybe, I don't know, have you gotten information from other places that have read your report that may be able to help you in your future efforts? Does it work that way in this community?
Well, it's actually been kind of the opposite. Other cities that have seen this report and then come to us and said, okay, how do we do this? Can you help us? So we've talked with a range of cities: Phoenix, Scottsdale, Flagstaff, even Bisbee and Cochise County are getting on the bandwagon.
Well, we've seen some examples already of the sustainability efforts from the city of Tucson, but you also have done some other things in regards to traffic planning with Dunbar Springs. And if we can pull up that slide and talk about that for a moment. And how did this come about? And it really turned out well, if I may say so, not knowing any particular background of it.
Well, to clarify, Dunbar Spring neighborhood did that themselves.
All right.
Yeah, we did not help facilitate that, but that's another example of how the grassroots community decides what they want in their neighborhood. They wanted a traffic calming circle, they wanted to do water harvesting in it, they wanted native plants planted, and they created a beautiful painted mural around the traffic circle that brought community members from
just really attractive
around the city. Yeah, it was a really wonderful project. And that's similar to what they're doing actually in Portland, where they're finding that these crossroads of traffic can become crossroads of people. And all you have to do is make it attractive and create a reason for people to congregate there. So again, a model that can be replicated in other parts of the city, and Dunbar Spring neighborhood gets all the credit for that.
Well, we certainly wouldn't want to trod on their credit. What are some of the biggest challenges that Tucson is going to have to face, or even the region, in becoming more sustainable?
Well, there's topic issues, but then there's also what sustainability is itself that makes this difficult to get a handle on. Tucson's a really, really diverse community, and that's something that's a great asset. We're very unique, there's a lot of variety, and that's wonderful. But what it also means is that there are a lot of different perspectives about what sustainability means. And there's technical definitions. The United Nations has weighed in and said, actually as early as 1987, this is the definition of sustainable development. But my personal feeling is if you get too caught up in kind of the national or international level of issue, you miss the boat, because it's really about people's quality of life. And that's why the Dunbar Springs example, it was so wonderful, is because it isn't just about being environmentally sustainable. It's about being a community. It's about building social fabric, getting people together, and doing something that does have an environmental benefit. So, you know, people tend to think of sustainability as being just an environmental initiative, but we have to make sure that as we move forward that you're respecting all of those different values and cultural perspectives and social needs, and you're doing it in a way that benefits everyone's economic status and security. So we can't focus on just the environmental and place a burden on some particular sector of the community.
I'm afraid that's going to have to be the last word. Leslie Liberti and Ann Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today. We've learned a lot, and if you're interested in learning more, of course, you can go to the phone number and website we mentioned before. Don't forget, Government Connection next week with the Pima County Health Department. Thank you very much for joining us, and have a great evening.